Hi, welcome to this week's episode of the Early Childhood Educator. Considering opening your own home childcare program, I think you might want to consider these 4 things. The first thing I want you to consider is, number 1, do you have the space, physical space in your house to host other children coming in every single day, or part-time if that's what you choose. First things first, you need to decide if you want to have your childcare space separate from your living space or if you are going to use it as common area. So in your living room, for example, and your kitchen, or are you going to basement space or a second living space that you could use just designated for childcare? And what do you have space for? You have to think about what's going to bring more peace to your life. Is it going to be easier to operate your program day to day if you're in your own living space? Maybe you have your own children and they're already comfortable in the space and you just kind of add the other children to it. Maybe you like to cook while the children play, so you need to be up where your living room kitchen space is. Maybe that allows you to do some cleaning and prepping, and maybe that brings you a sense of peace to be able to be there in your home, kind of doing life and work at the same time. Or are you going to find more peace having a program that's physically separate from your home space? Do you like the idea of turning off the lights at the end of the day, going upstairs or to the other side of the house and taking a deep breath, and you're home? You're not in work mode on the weekends. You don't see your business in every little corner of your house. It's kind of tucked away. It's important to remember this is your home is your safe space, and if it feels overwhelming to have adults coming into your house to drop off their children, pick up their children, feels like it might feel like there's tension in your heart around that. Have your own private area and feel comfortable in. Does the idea of having those parents dropping off in your home feel uncomfortable for you, or feel like as you do this longer it's become a wearing thing? Can you make that prediction knowing yourself? Do you have a separate entrance that you can kind of create an entryway area that feels like more public private space where you can host people, welcome people in, but it doesn't feel like they're invading on your privacy? The way I have it set up is I'm lucky to have a door that comes from my garage and then directly down to my basement space, so my childcare space is separate, and that allows the parents to park. They come into the garage, there's a place to drop off the boots, and messages on the board, and then they come down the stairs into my childcare space. They can see into my kitchen a little bit, but it's totally separate, so they don't need to go into my living space and see the bathroom that I get ready in the morning, or see my kitchen table that still has my kids' breakfast on it, that kind of stuff. Not that I think they would really care, but it just feels more comfortable for me to have my space separate. And it just makes sense with the house I have. What makes sense with the house that you have? Remember, we are setting boundaries here. What boundaries, physical and emotional, can you set in your home to make sure that you're taking care of your future self and your family's future self? That it doesn't feel like an invasion on your home when you do those things at the same time? Or does that feel like an impossible task in your space? Let's think about some of the areas that you need in your space in order to run a childcare program, and you can think about if you have potential for that. And first thing you'll obviously need is a play zone. So is this in your living room perhaps, or maybe you have your children's playroom or a play space for the children to have, a dramatic area, a gross motor area, an art area. All of these things. Do you have a space where you can host the children's play? The second space you'll need is a sleep space, and this can be done in many different ways. Perhaps the easiest way, if you're choosing to have cots, for example, or pack and plays, is those can be set up in the current play space, so you can do double duty on that one. Maybe you have cots in your living room, or maybe it's your basement. You can put cots out. Or do you have separate bedrooms? Perhaps you're going to use your own child's bedroom and have some children in different rooms. I have all my children in the same room, unless I need to have a younger child who maybe gets distracted in a pack and play. I either put that in my playroom in the past, or in my hallway, or my own child, now that I have one, he sleeps upstairs in his crib. Another kind of zone you need to make sure you have is a drop-off area where you can have the children's coats hanging, their backpacks, a space to get on the ground, get ready for outside time, and as well as when you come inside, having space for that too. Place by your door that the families will come in, where you can set up hooks or cubbies for the children, and they each have their own individual. Of course, we're going to need a washroom space and a change table area. So have a washroom that's easily accessible off of wherever your play space is, so that you can make sure you can easily maintain sight lines with the children you're helping in the washroom or changing at the change table, the children that are in the playroom, Or do you have capacity to maybe have washroom routines where everyone goes together? Does that make sense for you? Under my licensing where I live, I need to have sight lines of all the children at all times. I can't leave the children in a space and go with other children to the washroom. I need to make sure I can see them. So my washroom has the door off because it is a separate space. I'm lucky to be able to do that, and I can pop in and out and see the children. We're all in the same zone. Upstairs, if I had my childcare space upstairs, my bathroom is kind of tucked away from where my main living area is, where maybe my playroom would be. And so I would need to consider how that routine needs to look. Perhaps the children know to line up in the hallway outside the bathroom when I need to change a diaper or help a child on the toilet, and maybe there's special activities right outside the bathroom door for them to use. So it is doable, but you do need to think about that. If that sounds too complicated and too stressful in your day, maybe that's something you need to consider. Next thing you need to think about is where you're going to eat, you're going to prep, and how you're going to prep. The way I do it in my program is that I make the food the morning of, and I put it in the oven on warm and hold, or put it down in the fridge if it needs to be reheated in the microwave, or if it's a cold lunch. Or I do it the night before, same thing. And that way I can interacting with the children's play. We can stay out a little bit longer before lunch because the food's already ready. It just needs to be like the last minute prep or reheated. And that really works for my program. You need to figure out what works for your program. Do you want to be up in your kitchen and cooking while the children are playing inside? Is that something you'd like to do? Or do you want to do it the way I do it and kind of have that pre-prepped so that you can be with the children, interacting with them as they play or be outside? Do you want to have a whole bunch of high chairs and booster seats at your kitchen table where your family eats dinner? Is that something that you get compact ones that can slide away at the end of the day? Is that a routine you can hold for yourself where everything goes tucked away at the end of the day? Or does that feel uncomfortable for you? Do you feel like you need to have a completely separate space? It's important to you to have a child height tables and chairs for your children to eat at. Is that something you could have maybe in your living room at your coffee table? You could have little chairs around it and that's where they eat. Maybe that's not a good idea for your space. I don't know. You have to decide what's right for you and what you're okay with. So thinking about snacks, lunches, are you even going to provide them? Are the parents going to provide bagged lunches? Last space you need to think about is your outdoor space. Of course, outdoor play is so important for children, and obviously as a forest and nature school practitioner, I am totally advocating that you get outside at least 2 times a day and at least an hour each. That's actually what the regulations are for us here in Ontario, Canada, by the Ministry of Education. You don't have to have your own backyard. Do you have public play space that you can walk to every day, or maybe a nature trail near you? And you need to consider, is this realistic that you can get to it at least once a day, out to that public play space or out to your backyard, a close enough walk that you can get there? You really need to be realistic, because if it's not convenient, you're not going to go, and that's a concern for the children's well-being. They need outside time. The second thing you need to consider is, do you have the knowledge and skill set to operate a childcare program? This is not a job for just anybody. Firstly, do you have the physical and emotional stamina to work long hours? Because remember, you're starting your day before the parents their job and finishing after their job, plus maintaining your own family. Does that feel like something you want to commit yourselves to or are able to do? Do you have chronic back pain, for example? Remember, you're going to be bending down a lot with children and carrying children and lifting them off of the change table. So there's lots of heavy lifting and crouching and squatting. Is that something that you are up for? Are you an introvert or an extrovert, or an extroverted introvert? Can you be social with children all day and then like you're built up by that, or does that feel extremely exhausting and wearing and it's going to be really hard to maintain? So you need to think about yourself as a person and be reflective on that. How am I going to be able to handle that type of interaction in my workday? Do I have experience with this type of interaction, or am I used to a different kind of job that's completely different in terms of social interaction? What is my capacity? I would argue this job needs you to have high energy levels and positive personality, because if you're a Debbie Downer, it's going to impact the children and it's not going to be a great program. So you need to have a positive attitude. It's so important. Do you have an understanding of child development or any experience in the early childhood education sector? You can't just be someone who loves kids. I'm sorry, that's not enough. A passion for this job and this career, you're raising children. You need to understand how big of a job and responsibility that. You don't have to have the education, but are you interested in educating yourself and learning more? I would argue it's best if you have your early childhood education, whatever that looks like where you live. Continue to train and learn as you go. Engaging in professional development, continuous professional learning is so important, especially when you work alone and you don't have other colleagues to bounce your ideas off of or to learn from. We're gonna come across children and families that are really difficult to work with and have unique challenges, and you need to have a tool belt to work with those families and children. And if you don't have anything in your tool belt, or even a desire to have a tool belt, then it's going to be really hard, even impossible, to do this job well. And it's really important, if you're committing to taking care of other people's children, that you have a drive to learn how to take care of them well and how to teach them well. You need to consider what kind of program you want to offer. Is there a certain philosophy you relate to well, or you want to learn more about and try to implement in your program? What is that driving force of your everyday? Maybe you're really passionate about art, or maybe you're really passionate about being outside with children. Maybe your passion is about helping children with problem solving. Whatever it is that you feel like you're really strong at or really passionate about, grab a hold of that and make that the center of your program. And who are you going to find as mentors and supports in that? Because it's very, very difficult, even if you're a highly motivated person, to be in this by yourself and mentor yourself. You need to have others out there to work with and learn from and to challenge you in your thinking. And so in order to do that, you have to have strong self-reflection skills, self-regulation skills, and you have to be passionate. Think about your professionalism skills and your communication skills. Is that something you're really good at? Because if it is, you'll succeed in this sector. But if not, you're gonna need to learn how to do that, because that is so vital to running your own program and working in someone else's program. Number 3, I want you to think about boundaries. What boundaries will you set in your home childcare program? You need to create a program handbook and a contract for your families to read and sign. This is a must. Sure, people operate home childcare programs very loosely without contracts and handbooks, but this is going to save you in a sticky situation, hold you and the families enrolled accountable, and it's a place to look back to when you lose your way. Getting a program handbook sets the foundation for a good quality program. So a program handbook or a parent handbook, whatever you want to call it, this is a place where you can put everything that crosses your mind when you think about what you want your home childcare program to be, any policies, procedures you want to have in place, things that are important to you when you think about child rearing and day will look like, your daily routines. Put everything in here. Anything that feels like a requirement for you, or that actually is a requirement based off the governing body, daily schedule, your philosophies, your housekeeping rules, things about payment, the environment. You want parents to know what they're signing up for, and then their expectations are going to be set in place, and your expectations will be clear as well. If you don't seem like a good fit at any point, you can just pull out your program handbook, and that outlines your reasoning why your program handbook has your back. And in addition to your program handbook, you need to have a contract that every family signs, and I actually would suggest every family would sign per child, each individual contract. And make sure this contract refers to the program handbook so that everything is very clear that they've read the program handbook and agree to what it says and understand of your expectations. You worked hard to lay it all out, make them read it. Create your contract to be renewed every year and get parents to re-sign information that they need to change in their enrollment packet. This also gives an easy out for families and for caregivers. If you work with a child for a year and you feel like this is not a good fit, you can simply not renew their contract. And that is completely fair once you give them lots of notice. 30 days notice is standard. I do mine from September to August. Even if you're caring for your friends or family's kids, get them to partake in all the same steps you would for your community families so that communication is clear, because sometimes there can be conflicts of interest, and this just helps everybody know what the expectations are all across the board. Set those boundaries from the start. Number 4, are you committed and invested in this job? This is extremely important work. You are helping raise the next generation and raise other people's children. Often you'll be spending more time with these children than their own parents will be, and that is an honor that needs to be recognized from the start. You are taking care of someone's whole world. That needs to be taken seriously to consider if you're ready for that commitment. You'll be offering a service that works for you, yes, but this is a childcare service. You need to consider if you can offer dependability and commitment to these families. Especially if you want to build a great reputation, you have to make sure you can be there for these families each day. Obviously within all those boundaries you set. Things come up like illness for yourself or your children, emergencies, inclement weather. That's okay, and it's to be expected, of course. You have to be aware that offering childcare is not something you can just call in and cancel last minute all the time. Families depend on you, and that is a key part of offering a childcare service. Always state everything in your handbook. What you'll do when the weather's bad and you or your child are ill, put that in your handbook. Are you invested financially? How long will you offer this childcare service for? Maybe you're just doing it while your children are young, and once they're off to school and kindergarten, then you're gonna close. You need to think about these things and be open about it with families. And how will you invest in this business as you build in your professionalism and in the physical space? Can you actually afford to start the business? Because there are a lot of upfront costs. You'll need to buy things such as beds for the children. Are you going to have some child-sized furniture? Maybe you need a wagon or a stroller to get to the park every day. Play materials will you need to purchase? I will argue that you don't need to purchase a whole lot of toys, but you do need to purchase some things for the children's environment. What is your commitment to food and nutrition? So how does this feel for you? Do you think considering these 4 things will impact your choice in opening a home childcare? Does it feel like you're excited and motivated and yeah, I got those things, I can do it, this is great, I'm so excited to get started? Or does it feel like, maybe I need to put a little more thought into this or put some things in place before I open a home childcare program? Maybe this isn't the right time for me or the right space for me. Let me know in the comments below if you're gonna open a home childcare and if you're excited. What do you wanna know? Can I help you along the way? Let me know in the comments below. What do you need to put in place for yourself to open a home childcare in the future? Let me know again in the comments. I wanna hear all of the things, share with you in the midst of it all. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week on the Early Childhood Educator.